Hey, it's Max. I haven't done a video in a bit. Hope everyone is doing well, enjoying the new year. I wanted to do the same thing as last year and do my top 5 books, and I'm going to do a top 5 videos soon after. Um, jump right into it. It's been a great year of reading. Found some really awesome authors. Um, really expanded my view of um, the possibility of literature. Got some fiction and some nonfiction this year. A good mix. Um, Best year yet so far. So we'll jump right into it. This is going to be no particular order. Maybe the first one is the one I enjoyed the most though. Laurus by Eugene Vodolazkin. He is considered one of Russia's best contemporary authors. Um, and for these, I just kind of took the Amazon description just because I don't know, I think it'd be a better description than I could kind of fumble off. But I do have for most of these a little excerpt from them that I enjoyed just to add a little flavor to it. Um, so Loris, uh, the book is a time of plague and pestilence, and a young healer skilled in the arts of herbs and remedies finds himself overcome with grief and guilt when he fails to save the one he holds closest to his heart. Leaving behind his village, his possessions and his name, he sets out on a quest for redemption, penniless and alone. But this is no ordinary journey. Wandering across plague-laden Europe, offering his healing powers to all in need, he travels through ages and countries, encountering a rich tapestry of wayfarers along the way. Ousted by highwaymen, lynched in Yugoslavia, and washed overboard at sea, he eventually reaches Jerusalem, only to find his greatest challenge is yet to come. Winner of 2 of the biggest literary prizes in Russia, Laurus is a remarkably rich novel about the external themes of love, loss, self-sacrifice, and faith, from one of the country's most experimental and critically acclaimed novelists. Yeah, it was a joy all the way through, um, following this boy from his youth uh, across 15th century Russia, um, the inner monologue, and um, all these themes were just, yeah, it was really enjoyable. I got through this one really quickly. And so the little excerpt, early in the beginning, he is living with his grandfather, who is a healer. He has all these. This is 15th century Russia, so um, they heal with herbs and a lot of home remedies, and um, so he's teaching him all these things. And there's a wild wolf that kind of joins them in their daily um, habits, and they go out and explore around them and pick from the gardens and stuff. And what happens is there's um, an intruder that breaks into their house, and the wolf saves them from the intruder, but he's fatally wounded, and um, the grandpa tries to save him. He patches him up. They all go to sleep. The next morning, the wolf isn't there, and the boy asks his grandfather why the wolf went off to die rather than staying to die with them, the ones who loved him. And the grandfather responded, "It was his way of warning us that everyone remains alone with God at the final moment." And so I thought that was pretty um, touching and remarkable and wise. And there's all these little things like that throughout the book that make it really special. So the next one, going from fiction to nonfiction, is Tom Holland's Dominion. Um, this one also written pretty recently. Tom Holland's, he has a really great podcast, The Rest is History. Really great historian from England. So here's what Amazon says about it. Christianity is the most enduring and influential legacy of the ancient world, and its emergence the single most transformed development in Western history. Even the increasing number in the West today who have abandoned their faith of their forebears and dismisses all religion as pointless superstition remain recognizably its heirs. Seen close up, the division between a skeptic and a believer may seem unbridgeable. Widen the focus, though, on Christianity's enduring impact upon the West can be seen in the emergence of much that has traditionally been cast as its nemesis in science, in secularism, and yes, even atheism. That's why Dominion will place the story of how we came to be what we are and how we think the way we do in the broader historical context, ranging in time from the Persian invasion of Greece in 1480 BC to the ongoing migration crisis in Europe today, from the Nebuchadnezzar to the Beatles. It will explore just what it was that made Christianity so revolutionary. Or Nebuchadnezzar. Anyways, it will explore just what it was that made Christianity so revolutionary and disruptive, how completely it came to saturate the mindset of Latin Christendom, and why, in a West that has become increasingly doubtful of religious claims, so many of its instincts remain irredeemably Christian. The aim is twofold: to make the reader appreciate just how novel and uncanny were Christian teachings when they first appeared in the world, and to make ourselves and all that we take for granted appear similarly strange in consequence. We stand at the endpoint of an extraordinary transformation in the understanding of what it is to be human, one that can only be fully appreciated by tracing the arc of its parabola over the millennia. So that's actually a really great description, um, and why I thoroughly appreciated the book because it explored, not in this like dogmatic way, but just as a historian would, going through and just seeing the cultural shift over the generations and how Christianity has um, it's baked in to our society, kind of take it for granted now, and just but somehow we say we're past all of it, which is uh, Tom's point is really like, that's not really the case. We can't really say that. It's so a part of us that uh, there's no way you can say that it's not a part of you. Like he would say, if you believe in basic human rights, like that's not something Romans would agree with at all. Um, uh, the dignity of your neighbor. Roman times that would not have been the case. Now it's a given, and yeah. So that's a if you're interested in history and culture, kind of seeing what it means to be human, and taking a look at Christianity, the history of Christianity up till today. That this book is really, really great, and a lot of people have commented on it and use it as a reference for these kind of conversations. The next one is a book that I'm going through right now that's I'm really enjoying. The Master and Margarita. This is, I think, I have the date. Oh yeah, finally published in 1966 and 1967. Yeah, this is a wonderful book. Nothing in the whole of literature compares with The Master and Margarita. One spring afternoon, the devil, trailing fire and chaos in his wake, weaves himself out of the shadows and into Moscow. Mikhail Bulgakov's fantastical, funny, and devastating satire of Soviet life combines two distinct yet interwoven parts, one set in contemporary Moscow, the other in ancient Jerusalem, each brimming with historical, imaginary, frightful, and wonderful characters. Written during the darkest days of Stalin's reign and finally published in 1966 and 1967, after Bulgakov died, which is interesting. Um, and he probably knew that this wasn't going to be published until after his death, something that I don't think many people really, um, we would want to see the fruits of our labor in our lifetime. And if we couldn't see that, then we probably wouldn't start on a project like that, which I think separates us from people in our uh, recent to distant past. And finally published in 1966 to 1967, The Master and Margarita became a literary phenomenon, signaling artistic and spiritual freedom for Russians everywhere. Yeah, so it's a great book. Got my copy here. Just going to read a little excerpt from the introduction. And by the way, every book that has one of these in there every book should have one of these in there. It's just so useful. This is just part of the introduction. I think it's a good addition to kind of presenting the book as a whole and what it's trying to offer, and maybe into the mind of Bulgakov and Soviet society at the time. Bulgakov weaves his stories into quite distinct types of fabrication, contrasted in style and texture, in tone and mood, in their integral laws and logic. By conventional categories, these are different orders of fiction, different models of created worlds. The world of Wolin, the devil, is pure magic, where ordinary notions of process and possibility are irrelevant, where it is absolutely normal for time, space, shape, and dimension to expand or contract or be transmuted at any moment. Pigs can fly, distances evaporate, a cat can play chess, though not very well. An apartment can change into a ballroom, or rubles into dollars, and back again, and hours can rush past quite literally in no time. Quite literally no time. Wolin's visit to Moscow is the intrusion of one kind of narrative into another. Moscow and life in general for the Muscovites ought to function accordingly to rationally explainable rules in materially induced sequences of cause and effect. With Wolin's arrival, realist expectation clashes with magical fact, and the result is chaos. For the two worlds are simply not compatible with one another. Those who accept magic and the devil as fact are reduced to gibbering, or deemed deem themselves mad. Rarely can Dr. Stravinsky's hospital have had such a stream of new inmates. The cure is to blot out the fact with a plausible lie, to explain it away, to reaffirm her habitual reality through a fiction. In Jerusalem, there is precisely the opposite clash of expectations. Here we, the readers, expect the divine or the supernatural. Bulgakov strips away the mystery and propels the action along a rigid line of conventional comprehensibility of strictly human cause and effect. We are prepared for the miraculous, or if we are Bulgakov's 1930s Muscovites, for the preposterous. But our prejudices for the gospel and Christian tradition are ground down in an unbending demonstration of psychological realism. The devil is in Moscow, but God has no role in Jerusalem. Paradoxically, these different styles and worlds both contradict and reinforce each other. If left by themselves, Wolin's ball or Margarita's broomstick joyride would be sealed off as a fairy tale or a macabre fantasy. Wolin becomes authentic fact in the novel because of his presence among the Muscovites, because he can chat politely with the citizens who are tangibly affected by what he does, even if they do not acknowledge either who he is or that such things can be done. If left by themselves, the Jerusalem chapters would be sealed off as just as another reworking of the Gospels, as an imaginative hypothesis. But in The Master and Margarita, through their penetration of and by other layers of the novel, they acquire an aura of immutable and unassailable truth. They start as historical fact recounted by Wolin, underpinned by his seventh proof, as demonstrated on the Moscow streets. They continue in a dream of the temporarily insane poet Ivan Bezdomny, then as the novel by the master as read by Margarita, and finally they fuse with the story about the Master and Margarita Through all these contingencies of provenance, the Jerusalem narrative remains absolutely fixed, not composed, but revealed. Um, so, yeah, I didn't know anything about this book. I kind of just picked it up at a used bookstore. I heard of it. Um, and once I read that introduction, I was like, this is definitely a book that I'm going to find really interesting. And it has been really interesting. That contrast, um, you know, the fantasy and the divine. It's just so interesting, and it's remarkable that a human being um, wrote something like that and put all these themes and smashed them together. I haven't finished it yet, so I can't really put a definitive on it, but yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far. It's one of those books that I can't put down. Um, the next one is nope, it's Dominion. We're going back to um, Eugene Vodolazkin. I just love Laurus so much, and he came out with a new book this year, A History of the Island, which was it was really good. I can't say if I liked which one I liked better. Laurus is just it was written like a novel. Um, you have a straightforward journey basically, which is nice. This is more experimental, as we'll see. I'll just read it here. Um, Monks devious and devout, an age-defying royal pair, chronicle the history of the fictional island in this witty critique of Western civilization and history itself. Eugene Vodolazkin, internationally acclaimed novelist and scholar of medieval literature, returns with a satirical parable about European and Russian history, the myth of progress, and the futility of war. This ingenious novel, described by critics as a coda to his best-selling Laurus, is presented as a chronicle of an island from medieval to modern times. The island is not on the map, but it is real beyond doubt. It cannot be found in history books, yet the events are painfully recognizable. The monastic chroniclers dutifully narrate events they witness: quests for power, betrayals, civil wars, pandemics, droughts, invasions, innovations, and revolutions. The entries mostly seem objective, but at least one monk simultaneously drafts and hides a true history to be discovered centuries later. And why has someone snipped out a key prophecy about the island's fate? These chronicles receive commentary today from an elderly couple who are the island's former rulers, Prince Parfeny and Princess Xenia, are truly extraordinary. They are now 347 years old. Eyewitnesses to much of their island's turbulent history, they offer sharp-eyed observations on the changing flow of time and their people's persistent delusions. Why is the royal couple still alive? Is there a chance that an old prophecy comes to pass and two righteous persons save the island from catastrophe? Um, For readers with an appetite for more than a dry, rational, scientific view of what motivates, divides, and unites people, A History of the Island conjures a world still suffused with mystical powers. So, after reading that, I remember looking at this before I bought it. I was like, looks awesome. And after reading Laurus, that definitely added to it. Yeah, it was awesome. It was a great book, and for the um, I guess the addendum to this, I wrote in my Substack, Maxwell Stetson, Life Substack. Life is a poem by Tarkovsky's, Andrei Tarkovsky's father, who was a poet. Um, that's what the blog is called. But my most recent entry is called Afghan's Prophecy. And most of what I do there is just make scrapbookings of books that I read or essays or things like this. Maybe sometimes I explore a topic myself and write about it, but most of it's just scrapbooking. And I scrapbooked really just the last couple paragraphs of this book. So, spoiler, I'm just going to read the last couple paragraphs because they're just so good. And I think that has a lot to um, say that are helpful. And um, I don't think it will ruin the book for anyone, but yeah, it's maybe it will, but I mean, I'm going to read it anyways. Um, Meanwhile, the situation on the island was becoming inflamed. Gangs of robbers had begun making their appearance in the city and its environs. They were composed of local people, but rapid development cavalrymen later joined them. The bandits felled. So the island is kind of just chaos. Is like it's kind of the end of the world. The bandits felled trees on the roads to stop cars, then mercilessly robbed their owners. In the evenings, the miscreants burst into theaters, restaurants, and gaming houses, and not daring to interfere, the police drove away when they saw them robbing patrons. In the third year of Varvara's reign, a meteorite fell on the island. It fell on an oil tank, setting a fire, and that huge torch blazed until all the oil burned up. This made people recall Agathon's prophecy. In those same days, a diamond of inconceivable dimensions was found in southern mines. People said that the Earth's depths had not previously begotten diamonds like that, and a human's eyes had not seen them. News of the astonishing diamond spread around the world, and everyone looked at the images with wonderment. Others, unafraid of the tempters that had seized the island, went to the mines where the stone was initially on display for viewing under careful guard. Once cut, a diamond is called an adamant. The stone found on the island, despite not having been processed, shone as if it had been cut and was thus called an adamant. It is known about the properties of diamonds that fire and iron are powerless before them, so they can be hit by a hammer or cast into a crucible to melt, and nothing will damage or soften them. I shall liken that stone to the hearts of those who no longer feel a thing, or no longer understand, who are not grateful for what is good, or impervious to tenderness and reverence, and not mollified by supplication and do not fear threats. That same year, underground tremors resounded as if someone huge had been locked beneath the ground and was desperately straining to get out. All as pervasive smoke made its appearance over the top of the mountain for the first time in many centuries. Seeing what was happening, police officers began leaving their jobs, for there was no occupation more dangerous under the present circumstances. Ambulances now came only for calls from the central part of the city, since it was still protected. It was not infrequent that doctors were called for one single reason: to rob them or to take away their narcotic drugs. Several weeks later, ambulances no longer went anywhere. An unprecedented number of prostitutes of both sexes had appeared on the streets. They were hungry and tugged at the sleeves of pedestrians, offering bodies ruined by vice. But there were not many pedestrians, since few dared go outside after 6 in the evening. The city emptied out. Island residents' desperation gradually began growing into rage. People came to the main square and expressed that rage openly. Everyone understood that the government had long been powerless to effect anything, but the rage was like water that overfilled the dam. It sought a way out and was bound to vent itself on someone. More and more people gathered near the presidential palace with each passing day, and they were even angrier. On the day the human ocean flooded not just the main square, but also the adjacent streets, island residents demanded that Varvara come out to them, but Varvara did not come out. She had escaped the previous night, dressed in man's clothing. A power vacuum has set in. For the first time in all the history of the island, nobody wants to take power, for it is unclear what to do under these pitiful circumstances that have now come through God's calamity. The misfortune has arrived. The mountain has begun to awaken. The weak puff of smoke emitted above it changed into a thick column of smoke breaking from its mouth. Its emergence is accompanied by vibrations from the earth, as it as the as if the unseen and huge one was pounding there for all the last months, joined forces with the mountain and now welcoming its awakening. Fiery rivers had already begun to flow along one of the mountain slopes, burning everything in their path. Smoke is coming from the north, from the burning oil, and there is a cloud of ash from the south, from the mountain. And the sky is dulled, and the sun barely breaks through the ash, settles on the earth. Everyone is gathered at the main square, and nobody is leaving, knowing that it will be easier to find a path to salvation together. Everyone speaks as of Agathon, the forward-looking's prophecy. It is now obvious to all that it is beginning to come true. Old and young, rich and poor, believers and non-believers are all talking about it. We opened up the world, and that was for the good. But it has been said that there is a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. Days came when ailment seized us and good turned into harm. But we did not rid ourselves of our ailments, but rather acquired others. And strangers undated the island. We reside among them as a crow upon ruins. Our woe, however, is ourselves, not strangers. For depravity multiplied, and we became embittered and became to crowd one another. And a great hostility flared up between us. So brother struck brother, and son struck father. The earth, which is sensitive to the bitterness of people, itself became embittered. Our hearts are ready to turn to ash, and we are unable to pray to the Lord for salvation, for he will turn his face from us. And if 3 righteous people are not found among us to climb the mountain and speak with him, our life will cease in smoke and darkness. And so we began to think of 3 righteous people capable of speaking with him, and no one comes to mind but Parpheny and Xenia. It is now clear the mountain is calming. So this, I'm just scrapbooking, I'm kind of skipping parts, but so Parpheny and Xenia went up the mountain, and now they cannot be found. It is clear that the mountain is calming. The sky brightens slightly. The soldiers form a human chain and scour the mountain in accessible places. They are searching for Parpheny and Xenia. The searches went on for more than a week, but their royal highness were not found. But the royal highnesses were not found. A 3-day mourning period was announced due to their death, and bells tolled all over the island. It makes one's head spin to think of how many years they were alongside us, advanced in age and decrepit of body. What might one think they could do? But it was Parpheny and Xenia who defined our life. With just their presence. The feeling has never left me that we rushed with the morning. It is hard to believe that people with such a lengthy attachment to life could lose it. They are most likely taken by the one with whom they are conversing that night. But that is why they went to the mountain. Others say that a discussion of that sort could not have taken place, since there were only 2 righteous people. But it was said by the Savior, "Where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them." It works out that there were 3 of them because Christ was with them. My intent is not to argue with anyone, for it is not truth that is born in argument, but wrath and anguish of the spirit. Whoever wishes may consider that the mountain swallowed Parpheny and Xenia, but the fact that on that night they disappeared, the mountain calmed, and the earth quieted down convinces me that I am right. And also, it is known that history is but a path along which a person walks. Along that path, one may increase goodness or sow evil. That depends on each person's choice. A person may blend in with a crowd, becoming like the fiery stream creeping down the mountain, and then harden like it. But one can move towards the mountain top, unafraid of tremors and rock falls. Blessed is the land that gives birth to such rulers. So, yeah, that's a great book. Great book. I love how the ending there is so magical. To end, there's this is a end with some nonfiction. Um, Ivan Illich, the great um, man that he was. He was a Catholic priest and did many wonderful things for people in his life, but also wrote a great deal about society and institutions and ideas. And David Cayley interviewed him before Ivan died, and this is kind of their conversation. Ivan didn't do a lot of interviews, I don't think, and so this one was a special one, attributing to David Cayley's brilliance and friendship and the work that he's done over the years. In this provocative new book, respected Canadian journalist David Cayley compiles and reflects upon the thoughts of Ivan Illich, one of the 20th century's most visionary cultural critics. Illich believed that the West could only be understood as a corruption of the Christian New Testament. Cayley presents Illich's exploration of this idea, illuminating Illich's thoughts on the criminalization of sin, on how the church has become a template for the modern nation state, and how contemporary society has become a congealed and corrupted Christianity. These critiques are as timely and valuable as Illich's prescription for fixing them. Yeah, so that's a little bit more nuanced for people, I guess, but it's for people that I guess that have issues with Christianity. Illich, who was a priest himself, would definitely agree. He has that famous quote that the corruption of the best is the worst, and he was referring to the church in that circumstance. So, yeah, it's a great book with him exploring his ideas on all these things a little bit more. The modern nation state, the criminalization of sin is the corruption of the oh man, I can't believe I forget it now. The Good Samaritan, where the state and the church has become the Good Samaritan. The institution have become the Good Samaritan instead of the individual, the person themselves, to embody that and be that that good neighbor. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what you guys have read, what you guys think of these titles, maybe what you think I might be interested in reading this year. I have some things, I guess, but I'm definitely open to other things. But yeah, hope you guys are doing well, and I'll talk to you guys soon.